What if I told you the key to powerful speaking isn't confidence or charisma, but silence? Not the awkward kind, but the kind that commands attention. Most people think eloquence is a gift, but the Stoics knew it's a skill, one built through discipline, clarity, and self-control. In a world full of noise, articulate speech stands out. It's not about using big words, it's about being intentional, about speaking with presence and precision. You don't need to sound impressive, you need to sound real. And in this video, I'll share 5 Stoic techniques that help me speak clearly, calmly, and persuasively, without forcing it. If you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, "Why didn't I say it better?" This is your moment. By the end, you'll have a blueprint to train your voice, sharpen your message, and own the room without raising your volume. If that speaks to you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's begin.
Number 1.
Expand your surface vocabulary. Words are tools, and like any tool, their power depends on how often and how precisely you use them. Most people walk through life with a limited set of linguistic tools, what psychologists call their surface vocabulary. These are the 1,500 to 3,000 words we use without effort, words we reach for automatically in daily conversation. But beneath this surface lies a reservoir, a vast ocean of language. Tens of thousands of words you've read, heard, or even studied, but never truly owned. These words sit in the shadows of your mind, unused, unclaimed. Now here's what the Stoics would say about that. If you possess a tool but never sharpen it, it's no better than not having it at all. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, revised his language with great care, not to sound elegant, but to sound exact. He believed that vague speech was evidence of vague thought. Seneca, too, warned against the excess of words, urging his readers to prefer the sharp over the grand. But sharpness only comes with practice. You see, if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. In speech, this means using the same tired phrases for every situation. I'm good. That's bad. I feel weird. The vocabulary is flat. The thought is flat. And ultimately, your ability to connect, persuade, or clarify becomes limited. Not because you're not smart, but because your tools are dull. So how do we sharpen them? The answer lies in the difference between passive and active vocabulary. Most people have heard of words like benevolent, meticulous, or circumspect. They might even know what they mean. But when the time comes to use them, the mind freezes. Why? Because those words live in the basement of your brain. You've never invited them upstairs. According to cognitive research, it takes at least 38 varied uses of a word before it transitions from your deep memory to your active vocabulary, not once, not twice, 38. This is where practice becomes sacred. I started keeping a small notebook. 5 to 10 words each week. I would write them, read them aloud, form a sentence, and then return the next day and do it again. This time with a different context, and again the next day. Soon, these words didn't feel foreign, they felt like mine. They belonged to me, not just in writing, but in real conversation. Now here's a deeper Stoic truth. The purpose of expanding your vocabulary isn't to sound impressive, it's to think more clearly. Epictetus said, "First learn the meaning of what you say and then speak." You don't do this for applause. You do this to ensure that what you say aligns with what you mean. Because when language is loose, meaning slips through the cracks. Think of how frustrating it is when you know exactly what you want to say, but the right word won't come. That moment, when your mind races, your mouth stalls, and you walk away from the conversation wishing you'd said it differently, is not a failure of intelligence. It's a gap in practice, a gap that can be closed. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, teaches that habits rooted in identity are the most enduring. Don't just say, "I want a better vocabulary." Say, "I am someone who speaks with intention." Then act like it, study like it, speak like it. Because words, when chosen well, can build bridges. They can heal tension. They can make the invisible visible. And that's where the beauty lies. Imagine being in a conversation where instead of saying, "I'm just confused," you say, "I'm feeling conflicted." Instead of, "He's always angry," you say, "He's chronically agitated, perhaps due to unresolved frustration." These aren't pretentious upgrades. They're accurate expressions of complex states, and accuracy is clarity. Let's also remember, great thinkers across time didn't just think deeply, they spoke clearly. Alan Watts, Carl Sagan, and Viktor Frankl didn't rely on complicated vocabulary to sound intelligent. They used precise words to explain deep truths, and the impact was timeless. So what can you do today? Start small. Pick 5 new words this week. Write them down. Use each in at least 3 different ways. Say them aloud. Use them in text. Use them when you speak to someone you trust. Don't rush. Don't aim for perfection. Just aim for presence, for practice. Because language isn't just how we communicate. It's how we shape reality. And if you want to live deliberately, you must learn to speak deliberately. The Stoics understood that mastering your words is a path to mastering your mind, and the mind, once disciplined, becomes the strongest instrument of all. So the next time you're about to say, "I'm fine," stop, pause, ask yourself, is there a word that fits better, that reveals more, that reflects the truth of what I feel or believe? Choose that word, speak it slowly, and feel your clarity sharpen. Not just in language, but in life.
Number 2.
Control silences. Most people are terrified of silence. The moment a conversation pauses, they rush to fill the space with noise. Any noise, a joke, a ramble, a filler, as if silence were a mistake that must be corrected. But the Stoics taught the opposite. Silence is not a void to be feared. It is a space to be mastered. And once mastered, it becomes your most powerful tool in communication. Think about it. When someone speaks without pause, their words blur together. There's no space to think, to feel, to absorb. But when someone speaks and then stops, intentionally, calmly, without rushing, the room shifts, people lean in. The silence becomes magnetic. Not because of what was just said, but because of what might come next. Just as music lives not only in sound, but in the space between notes, powerful speech lives in the pauses. They create rhythm, and rhythm creates retention. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Learn to be indifferent to what makes no difference." That includes the compulsive need to speak just to avoid silence. When you pause with intention, you demonstrate control, not just of your mouth, but of your mind. And that control builds credibility. People respect those who aren't rattled by quiet, who don't fidget in stillness, who can sit in the gap and let the silence speak. Take Robin Williams. Most remember him for his explosive energy, but watch his serious performances. Good Will Hunting, Dead Poets Society. Notice the pauses. Notice the restraint. The silence before a line. The breath after a sentence. That's not performance. It's presence. It's the ability to let the audience feel the weight of each word. The pause gives meaning room to breathe. In Stoic practice, silence is never passive. It is deliberate. It is the outer expression of inner strength. Epictetus reminded his students, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But this isn't just about listening to others. It's about listening inward, resisting the impulse to perform, to impress, to always have an answer. When you master your silences, you no longer fear the awkward pause. You use it. Before making a key point, you stop. After delivering a truth, you let it hang. In a heated moment, you breathe instead of react. In leadership, this silence becomes wisdom. In negotiation, it becomes leverage. And in personal relationships, it becomes emotional clarity. Because the pause creates space between stimulus and response. That space is where reason lives. But make no mistake, this is a skill, and like any skill, it demands training. The first step is awareness. Start noticing your discomfort with silence. When you're in conversation and feel the itch to speak, pause. Let it be awkward. Let your heart race. Then breathe over time. What once felt like tension begins to feel like control. That discomfort transforms into grounded presence. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming deliberate. Because silence does not mean absence of emotion. It often signals depth of thought. A well-timed pause says, I'm not here to impress. I'm here to be clear. And clarity doesn't rush. Look at Oprah Winfrey. Her interviews are legendary not because she dominates the room, but because she commands it through listening. Watch her lean in. Watch her wait. Her pauses aren't hesitation. Their intention, that moment before the next question, that's where empathy lives. That's where connection forms. Silence is her signal of respect, and it works. In your own life, silence is the frame that holds your message. Without it, your words spill over and blur, but with it, your message takes shape. It has presence, it has form, and just like the Stoics sought stillness, not to escape the world, but to understand it better, you can seek silence not to withdraw, but to deliver meaning more powerfully. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The same applies to speech. We don't lack opportunities to speak. We waste many of them by speaking too quickly, too reactively. Silence is what separates the impulsive from the intentional. And in today's world, intention is power. So here's your challenge. In your next conversation, pause before you speak. 2 seconds, that's all. Let the silence sit. Let it stretch. Then speak. At first, it will feel unnatural, even scary. But with time, you'll notice something shift. The words that follow a pause, they land, they carry more weight. They come from clarity, not reactivity. And that's the mark of a wise person. In a world addicted to noise, the one who controls silence controls the conversation. They control their presence. They hold the room not by volume, but by stillness. So don't fear silence, learn it, respect it, use it. Because when you can pause without panic, when you can sit in silence and still feel powerful, you're not just speaking with calm, you're speaking with authority. And that is the sign of someone who has not only mastered communication, but mastered themselves. And remember this, just because you're silent doesn't mean you're weak. In fact, most people fill the air because they feel powerless without words. But when you speak less and mean more, people begin to listen differently. They notice that you don't waste breath, that when you speak, it matters. That kind of presence cannot be faked. It is earned through practice, through poise, through the kind of self-command that only silence can teach.
Number 3.
Eliminate filler words. Filler words are the termites of speech. They eat away at the strength of your message, quietly, persistently, and without mercy. These small fragments may seem harmless, but they signal uncertainty. And in conversation, perception is everything. The way you speak often matters more than what you say. And when your speech is littered with filler, your message drowns in hesitation. But the Stoics offer a powerful response. Speak with intention, Seneca said. Speech that's filled with hesitation is a sign of a soul not yet in control. To the Stoic, clarity isn't about being eloquent. It's about discipline. It's about training your words to follow your mind, not your emotions. And when you eliminate filler, what remains is pure, deliberate thought. So why do we use filler words at all? It's not because we're careless, it's because we're afraid. Afraid of silence, afraid of judgment, afraid of choosing the wrong word. So we stall, we buy time. But every and like is a signpost of anxiety. And every time we lean on them, we teach our minds to doubt ourselves. We reinforce the idea that we can't speak clearly unless we pad it with noise. Here's the truth. Confidence doesn't mean speaking without pause. It means being comfortable with pause. It means holding space without rushing to fill it. When you're grounded, a second of silence isn't dead air. It's presence. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus taught that you don't control events, but you do control your reaction. In speech, that reaction is the moment between thought and word. That's where filler lives, and that's where practice begins. The first step is awareness. You can't change what you don't observe. Record yourself speaking. Listen carefully. Where do you insert fillers? Is it when you transition between ideas? Is it when you feel unsure? The patterns are revealing. They show you where your anxiety spikes and where your confidence falters. Once you've identified the habit, replace it not with another word, but with a pause, a purposeful silence. The goal isn't to fill the gap, it's to trust the gap, to understand that stillness can hold just as much weight as sound. When you feel a filler coming, close your mouth. Breathe, let your mind catch up. Then continue. This small act, done repeatedly, rewires your instinct. You begin to respond, not react, to deliver, not scramble. Barack Obama is a master of this. Watch his speeches. He pauses. Often, he allows his words to land. And when he hesitates, he doesn't fill the space with or He simply waits. That silence makes him appear thoughtful, composed, and deliberate. He's not afraid to let his audience catch up. And that calm restraint makes his voice more powerful, not less. Now, this isn't about becoming robotic. It's not about erasing all natural rhythm from your speech. It's about reclaiming control, about making sure that what you say comes from clarity, not from habit. When you remove filler words, you create space. Space for thought, space for intention, space for presence. And that space transforms not just how others hear you, but how you hear yourself. This practice is Stoic at its core. It's the same mental training Marcus Aurelius applied to his emotions. Observe, pause, redirect. Instead of reacting impulsively, you choose consciously, and that conscious choice, repeated over time, becomes character. Speech is no different. The more you practice pausing instead of filling, the more your voice reflects your values: calm, control, and clarity. So here's a small exercise for one full conversation today. Commit to noticing every filler word you're about to say. Don't judge it, just pause. Let it hang. Let the silence do the work. At first, it will feel unnatural. You'll want to smooth over the gap, but resist. Because in that resistance, growth takes root. That's the Stoic path. Choosing the uncomfortable truth over the convenient reflex. And over time, something remarkable happens. Your sentences tighten, your thoughts sharpen. Your listeners begin to lean in. Not because you're louder, but because you're cleaner. Because every word you speak has weight, and every silence has intention. You stop chasing the perfect sentence. You let it arrive, and in that stillness, there's a quiet authority that begins to rise. It's not loud, it doesn't beg to be noticed, but it's felt. The people around you begin to respond, not just to your words, but to your calm. To the way you pause, to the way you no longer need to prove anything through noise. That's the shift, and it starts with choosing silence over filler, clarity over clutter, discipline over default. Remember this. You don't need more words to sound wise. You need fewer distractions between you and your meaning. When you stop diluting your voice with noise, your truth begins to resonate. So the next time your mouth reaches for stop. The next time you want to soften your sentence with like, resist, let silence step in, let clarity rise. Because the fewer words you waste, the more power your words will carry, and the more you command your voice, the more you command your life.
Number 4.
Take inventory of your language input. You cannot expect to speak clearly if your mind is constantly fed with noise. Just as a body becomes what it eats, your speech becomes what it consumes. Every word you hear, every post you scroll past, every voice you allow into your mental space. These are ingredients, and like any recipe, the final product reflects the quality of its parts. Garbage in, garbage out. The Stoics understood this long before social media existed. Epictetus warned, avoid conversations with the vulgar. Not because he believed he was better than others, but because he understood the quiet influence of words, tone, and energy. What you expose yourself to shapes you, especially when you're not paying attention. Most people don't realize how much of their vocabulary is borrowed unconsciously. The phrases you repeat, the tone you adopt, even the rhythm of your sentences, these are absorbed, often from careless sources. That's why taking inventory of your language input is essential. It's not enough to practice speaking well. You must curate what you allow in. If your daily intake is gossip, clickbait, and sarcasm, don't be surprised when your speech sounds like distraction wrapped in irony. If your mental environment is flooded with complaint, comparison, and outrage, your voice will echo the same. So what's the alternative? You choose high-quality input, you read philosophy, you listen to thinkers who speak with precision, you expose yourself to language that builds rather than breaks, that clarifies instead of confuses, and slowly, almost invisibly, your own voice begins to change. You reach for better words, not because you memorize them, but because you've heard them used with purpose again and again. Look at Maya Angelou. Her command of language didn't come from formal training alone. It came from what she read, what she listened to, and what she refused to absorb. She once said, "Words are things. You must be careful about calling people out of their names." That sensitivity to language was no accident. It was the result of a disciplined environment. Her speech was elegant because her inputs were elevated. And that wasn't just an artistic choice, it was a moral one. This is not about elitism, it's about alignment. If you want to speak with depth, surround yourself with depth. If you want your words to matter, stop letting meaningless words flood your head. Choose podcasts that challenge you. Read books that stretch you. Follow people whose speech lifts rather than lowers. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and your thoughts are colored by your input." This doesn't mean you need to live in a library or retreat from the modern world, but it does mean living consciously, choosing quality over quantity, wisdom over noise. Because the mind doesn't just absorb content, it becomes content. It internalizes tone, rhythm, and value. And soon what you've consumed starts showing up in your everyday speech, in how you explain things, in how you pause, in the metaphors you reach for, even in how you comfort someone you care about. The beauty of this principle is that it works quietly. You don't need to announce it, you don't need to prove it. You simply start replacing the junk with the timeless. Where others scroll, you reflect. Where others absorb outrage, you absorb wisdom. And soon your tone shifts. Your metaphors become more vivid. Your pauses deepen. You speak with the kind of presence that only comes from mental clarity. It's the same reason elite athletes are careful with their diet. Not because they're trying to impress, but because they know what's at stake. You too are performing every time you open your mouth. Every time you explain, persuade, comfort, or lead. You are using words to build something, and builders don't use weak material. They use strong, refined, dependable input because the structure depends on it. Here's a small exercise. For 1 week, track everything you consume that involves language, every show, every article, every conversation, not to judge, but to observe. Then ask yourself, is this shaping me into the speaker I want to become? If not, it's time to upgrade, not out of guilt, but out of growth. And if you're worried about sounding too serious or out of touch, let that go, because clarity never goes out of style, stillness never feels outdated, and in a world drowning in noise, your calm, refined voice will stand out. Not because it shouts, but because it doesn't need to. You become the person who doesn't waste words, who doesn't echo chaos, who speaks from groundedness, and others feel it. Your mind is a garden. Your language is the fruit. If you don't like what's growing, don't just yank the words, change the soil, enrich it with better inputs, give it time, sunlight, silence, and challenge, and trust the process. Because what you feed your mind today becomes the way you speak tomorrow. So be selective, be intentional, and be unapologetic about it. Because speaking with clarity isn't just about practice, it's about purification. And when you cleanse your mind of verbal clutter, what's left is pure signal. And people listen to that, they remember it. Because clarity, once cultivated, carries its own gravity. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it.
Number 5.
Tune your voice instrument. Your voice is not just sound, it's signal. It's the emotional texture of your message. And like a musical instrument, it must be tuned if you want to move people, not just inform them. Yet most people speak in a flat, monotone rhythm that blunts the meaning of their words. The message might be strong, the logic might be flawless, but if the voice delivering it is dull, the impact dies before it lands. The Stoics, while often misunderstood as emotionless, actually practiced emotional clarity. They believed in showing only what was useful, not excess, not performance, just truth in its cleanest form. And part of truth is tone. Marcus Aurelius often emphasized the inner harmony required to speak with justice, humility, and self-control. These aren't just virtues of content, they're virtues of delivery, because how you say something is as much a reflection of your mind as what you say. And that reflection is never neutral. A flat voice suggests fatigue, uncertainty, or disconnection. A strained one reveals anxiety. But a voice that's tuned, measured, intentional, calm, conveys presence. It invites trust. People don't just hear what you're saying, they feel the groundedness behind it. Now think of the people who captivate you with just their voice. Sir David Attenborough, for example, can describe a tree and make it feel sacred. His voice rises and falls. It quickens with urgency. It softens with wonder. That's no accident. That's tuning. That's respect for cadence. That's emotional pacing. So what happens when we don't tune our voice? We lose the opportunity to connect. Our words fall flat. And in a world addicted to speed and volume, the absence of musicality makes us invisible. Monotone is the death of presence. It tells the listener, I'm not really here, even if the words say otherwise. But here's the good news. Your voice is an instrument you can train, and it begins with awareness. Record yourself reading something meaningful. Philosophy, poetry, a letter to someone you love. Then play it back. Are you rushing? Are your sentences collapsing into each other? Is every word delivered with the same pitch and weight? If so, you're not failing. You're just untuned, and that's fixable. The first thing to master is pace. Most people speak too quickly because they're nervous or unsure. But when you slow down, you signal certainty. You allow space for your words to land. You show respect for your listener and your message. As Epictetus said, Nature gave us one tongue and two ears, so we could listen more and speak less. That applies not only to the quantity of speech, but the quality of rhythm. Next is pitch. You don't need to sound theatrical, you just need variation. Emphasize a key word. Let your tone rise with curiosity or fall with finality. Speak as if you care, because if you don't, why should anyone else? Then there's volume, not shouting, not whispering, but matching your energy to your point. A whisper can be more powerful than a roar. If it's intentional, Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And voice is one of the fastest paths to emotion, to memory, to meaning. One mistake many people make is believing that passion means volume. It doesn't. Passion means precision. It means knowing which word to emphasize and when to let silence speak louder. If every word is shouted, none are heard. But if a sentence is delivered with rhythm and restraint, it echoes. Training this takes practice. One powerful technique: read poetry aloud, slowly, deliberately. Let each line breathe. Let each word echo. Poetry demands control, and control is what we're after. Another technique: imitate great speakers, not to copy, but to calibrate. Observe their breath, their pauses, the way they stretch a moment, then find your own version. Also speak with your body. Posture affects tone. When you're slouched, your breath collapses. When you're upright, your voice opens. The Stoics taught physical discipline as a gateway to inner order. Your voice reflects that order, or the lack of it, so speak from stillness, from strength, from poise. And finally, learn to love silence in music. Silence is not absence, it's anticipation. In speech, it's the moment your listener leans in. The great pianist Arthur Schnabel once said, "The notes I handle no better than many pianists, but the pauses between the notes, that is where the art resides." The same is true for you. The Stoics would remind you, don't use your voice to perform, use it to reflect order, precision, thoughtfulness. Speak not to dominate, but to resonate. Speak not to impress, but to express what is real, what is measured, and what is needed. So take time each day to practice your instrument. Read a paragraph with intention. Tell a story as if it mattered. Say someone's name with presence. Over time, your voice will stop being just a tool. It will become an extension of your character. And people will feel it. Because when a voice is tuned, it doesn't need to raise itself to rise. It doesn't beg to be heard. It simply arrives. With weight, with rhythm, with clarity. And in that clarity, others find not just information, but trust. You don't need to be born with a golden voice to speak powerfully. You just need to train it. Not once, but daily, because speaking well is not a performance, it's a practice. And every word you choose, every silence you hold, every breath you take with intention, it all shapes who you become. The Stoics didn't chase applause, they chased clarity. They spoke not to impress, but to express what was needed, nothing more. And in that restraint, they found strength. So if you've ever doubted your voice, don't. Strength doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes it speaks slowly, calmly, thoughtfully, but it always speaks from within. Start there, train there, speak from there. And if this spoke to you, let it echo. Like the video, subscribe, and more importantly, keep practicing, because your voice, once sharpened by purpose and discipline, will not just be heard, it will be felt.